Okay, when I put it to you, with the sterling or not, there are a lot of uncertainties. Let's go through some of them, not least the state of the British economy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key sterling weakness over the past year and a half has been the extremely severe recession and the monetary policy response. So the most important part of our sterling positive forecast is that we think the monetary policy will start tightening a bit sooner and perhaps more aggressively than people generally expect. But there's a lot of uncertainty about that. That's certainly fair to say.
That's got to be net pound positive, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. You know, the increase in asset purchases in August and then a further increase in November were in marked contrast, really, to what was going on in the rest of the G10, with the one exception of the US and the dollar. But we don't expect this to repeat itself in 2010.
Of course, the big political event is likely to play out as well over the next 6 months. Gordon Brown has to call an election by June. If we get a Conservative victory, is that pound positive? Is a Labour victory, well, a negative thing? And what about a hung parliament?
I think the negative would be a hung parliament. Really what financial markets like is certainty and clarity. And a hung parliament, or actually a very small majority for either party, I think would certainly initially be seen as a sterling negative event.
OK, well, of course, if we do have monetary tightening taking place, that leads me on to, well, the inflation scenario. And how's that going to play out?
Well, I think everyone expects, including us, that inflation is going to start picking up further into 2010. The VAT rise quite apart from anything else. But we do expect that increase to be relatively temporary, and then it's going to start coming back down again. A lot of the increase is down to the oil price, which, of course, has rebounded quite sharply from its trough. But I think that the key question, really, facing monetary policymakers is, will the recent upside surprise we've had to inflation continue? Because if that is the case, then really I think the monetary policy makers will have to do something about it. Well,
you mentioned oil. What about the other commodities? How did they really figure in what you're suggesting?
They matter as well. I think they matter a bit less for sterling than the oil price does, because there's still a very strong correlation between the dollar in particular and the oil price, and there are good underlying reasons why that is the case. The other commodities, of course, do matter, but I think a bit less.
All right, what about just plain good old-fashioned growth? Expecting the fourth quarter to show positivity. Mind you, we have been surprised on the wrong side, haven't we?
We have, indeed, although some of that surprise keeps getting revised away by the statisticians. But nonetheless, even if it does move to minus 0.1, it's still reasonably significantly lower than the initial estimate by we economists was. It'd be very, very surprising if the fourth quarter showed anything other than positive growth. But you're absolutely right, it will certainly be closely watched.
OK, as we head towards that, I mean, sterling, people are talking about depreciation, helping the economy to rebalance itself. Sure. That would produce, well, net better trade position, which in turn would be positive for the pound, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to bear in mind that only a couple of years ago, against the euro sterling was in the high 60s. It's now not far off 90. So we would expect some appreciation of sterling, but still for it to be way below where it previously was. And that is good news in terms of rebalancing the economy.
So the simple question is the pound undervalued against the euro? And how is it? Is it a fair value against the dollar?
Yes, I'd say yes, probably to both of those questions. I think it's clearer against the euro. I think that a fair value against the euro is really quite a long way away from where we are at the minute, more than 10%. Against the dollar, much closer to fair value. Probably is slightly undervalued. I think a fairer value for the dollar is probably between 165 and 170.
So let's look ahead and get your targets for the year ahead.
Well, against the dollar, we expect it really to remain fairly flat over the next 6 months or so. But in the second half of 2010, sterling actually to start appreciating reasonably robustly and to move into the high 170, so 177 is our target. Against the euro, we expect a more kind of smooth, gradual appreciation of sterling, and for it to move down into the lower half of the 80s, so around 84, possibly even 82 in a year's time.